Okay, but we'll break this all apart, but we'll start with what is maybe most interesting. There we go. Open-endedness. So as we all know at A-Life, right, open-endedness, very clear cut. There's really just like one definition of open-endedness that we all agree on, without a doubt, right? So maybe not. Okay. So rather than trying to tackle open-endedness as a binary question of is the system open-ended or not, we decided, and mainly Cliff, to treat open-endedness as this idea of a continuum. So open-endedness as how long can a system run before it stagnates or gets into like a cycle? How long can it continue to generate interesting and novel behavior? So specifically how we want to tackle this is this idea of the digital savannah. So we want to challenge this notion that there are necessary rules for open-ended evolution. So some of the literature are like metabolism or embodiment. And we want to instead show that open-ended evolution is a result of having a large set of synergistic rules that come together. So the idea here is to build a digital evolution system with modular rules. This helps us do ablations and see if we get more open-ended behaviors, what rules lead to that, and B, what are the like common properties between these rules. Okay, of course, open-endedness, right, we have no agreed upon definition, so there's no way to really measure open-endedness. So are there instead hallmarks we can measure, or some other metrics that should be correlated with open-endedness? Of course, if you have a static population, there's no change. I mean, you're not open-ended. If you have some short-term change, I mean, also very boring, not open-ended. And I mean, cycles are, once again, not open-ended, right? You need change, but clearly this isn't enough. With an open system, you'd expect novelty. So the generation of new individuals as you evolve. And people have also expressed that ecology is maybe a key hallmark here. So having a diversity of individuals within each generation. Now, these are all system-level measures of open-endedness, but if we had a truly open-ended evolution system, you would also expect that the individuals themselves would grow more complex. And I don't have a graphic here because the idea of complexity is also, like open-endedness, not very well defined, right? You can think of things like Kolmogorov complexity or measuring the number of component parts in an organism, but unlike the other three metrics, this is dependent on the system and not so agnostic. Now, these four hallmarks that I've just described make up the modes toolbox. So this toolbox describes a set of hallmarks for how we can try and detect open-endedness in a system. It was published in A-Life a few years ago, if you want to read more on that. And so yeah, on top of this, we have one additional component before we can analyze systems. And this is this notion of filtering. So evolution itself is a noisy process. And we're trying to find the long-term evolutionary dynamics. So to do that, we have to filter. Specifically, what the modes paper suggests, or one of the methods, is this idea of persistence filtering. So say we have this evolutionary history, and this is a phylogenetic tree here, and we want to see which individuals in this generation are significant to the long-term evolutionary dynamics. We have some filter length, so we check after that filter length, we take that population, and see which individuals from that initial generation still have progeny. And these are the individuals that we run the metrics on. Cool. So now the question is, will modes work for us? Before we build this massive system of the digital savannah, we wanted to test out this modes toolbox. Does it respond how we expect? And what exactly can we do with it? Okay. Evo sandbox. So this is a very simplified idea of digital savannah, where we still have modular rules. And I want to make a note here, this system is not very unlikely to be open-ended. What we instead wanted to do was remove the complexity and figure out how exactly does modes respond to some common factors. So just go not in too much depth, it's not too important. The Evo sandbox, we have bit string individuals, we have generational evolution, real selection, point mutations, but really the important part here are the modular rules we implemented. So we have parasites and fill and rare. These two are very common diversity generators in the literature, and they form a sort of implicit fitness of the individuals. We also implemented this target bit string. So since the individuals are bit strings, there's some target they need to try and match. I mean, this is extremely explicit, right? How well you match is how well you're doing. So target, we're not even going to get into target, right? This is very simple. I mean, the better you match a target, the more complex. It's just, we don't even need to go into these dynamics. So we have parasites here. On the x-axis, we have from off to strong, and this is just looking at parasites in isolation without target or without fit when rare. And I want to make a note here, all the plots I'm going to show have error bars, you just can't see them. So these dynamics are extremely stable. So we see at low and high values of parasites, we get like collapse metrics, but at intermediate values, we get higher ecology, novelty, and change. It's fine. And yeah, when we turn on target, we see at low and high values, once again, target seems to have a pretty significant effect, but at the intermediate values of parasites, it seems that overrules the target. Okay, with fit when rare, we see a similar dynamic here in ecology, where at low and high levels, we get decreased ecology, and at intermediate values, we once again see the maintenance of diversity. But unlike parasites, we'll see that with parasites, when we had increased ecology, we also saw increased change and novelty. With fit when rare here, when we see increased ecology, we instead see the collapse of novelty and change. Now, why is that? With fit when rare, what fit when rare tries to do is split apart the types of individuals. And so if you have any particular mutation to break away from an individual, you get decreased fitness because you're not very unique. And so it just maintains these very stable ecologies where all the mutations away are very deleterious. Whereas with parasites, it not only maintains the ecology, but individuals have a incentive to keep evolving and escaping the parasites, which is why you see the increased novelty and change there. Okay, so we'll bring it back to just fit when rare. And this is with parasites off. And now the benefit of having this kind of modular system is that not only can we run fit when rare with target and parasites off, we can also run it with parasites on. And so here we're showing the dynamics when we have a weak form of parasites and a strong form of parasites along each column. The important thing to take away here is just that we see extremely complex dynamics here. And the interaction of these is like far harder to predict than themselves individually. Okay. Not only that, in the original Modes paper, they suggest a filtered depth of 2 times your population size. And this just ensures that without selective pressures, you remove most of the neutral clades. We wanted to see whether different filter depths could tell us different information about the same run. So here we go from a filter depth of 100 all the way up to a filter depth of 5 times our population size. And we see across filter depths, you see different dynamics. At the short ones, you see the more short-term dynamics, so like how your mutational operators are allowing you to search a space. And at the along long filter depths, we see the long-term evolutionary dynamics. Yeah. Jumping back into the dynamics, along the y-axis here, we have parasites going from weak to strong, and along the x, we have fit when rare going to weak to strong. Red here is novelty, green is ecology, blue is complexity. And at the bottom, we've combined all 3 of those into one graph. So if there were one particular set of parameters that could maximize all of these, we would expect like a white point on that bottom graph. And as you can see, we don't see that, right? We see a mixed graph with greens, reds, blues, but nowhere are all 3 metrics maximized at one particular point. Yeah. And just a quick aside in a case study, the parasites actually were not so simple. So when I showed you the increased ecology, change, and novelty, this is what we expect from the literature and what we finally got. But when we first implemented parasites, what we instead saw was the increased change, increased novelty, and the complete collapse of ecology. So because we had the modes metrics, we were able to debug this and figure out that what was happening, that the parasite genomic space was just far too large. And so they would just continually chase the individuals without maintaining the ecology. But when we shrunk that space, we were able to get the dynamics that I showed earlier. Cool. And so yeah, we're on Digital Savannah. We demonstrated that modes is not only a great toolbox for showing the hallmarks of open-endedness, but also a great diagnostic tool. And thank you to Cliff and Emily for working with me on this project.